Welcome back to Common Liberty Podcast. I'm Jeffrey.
And I'm Eric.
Let's load the clip. Today we're talking about the affordability crisis and some other elements of the community in Erie, Pennsylvania. And Eric, we recently had some news about the affordability crisis in Erie regarding housing.
Yeah, I mean, some of the biggest issues in Erie are definitely come with housing. It's expensive. There's a mouse problem from what I've been hearing. And even recently at Erie Council, we've been hearing a lot of renters come in and talk about the fight that they're having to have with landlords to get to live in a safe apartment. We're going to go ahead and play a clip for you of Miss Charnel at the Erie City Courthouse. I always want to say county, but it's the Erie City Courthouse. And we're going to go ahead and play that now.
Evening, my name is Charnel Shepard. I'm an Erie resident. I live on the Lower East Side. I've been in my house almost a year and 2 months now, and my landlord was on the Section 8 list, so I thought that meant that she had been approved for Section 8 housing, but it did not. It means you can just call them and get on the list. So I started having problems with mice.
Walk over here. Oh my God, is this where they're coming from?
No.
Oh, look at all those dead mice.
Yeah.
Oh my.
She said, just get some traps. And I told her about it. Then my back porch started leaking, and I told her about that, and she refused to fix that.
Oh, screen is just plastic, like it's not an actual window. It's just plastic in that screen.
So the wind gets through here is not
Yeah.
good, and you can see the
You see
paint chipping off of all this.
Yeah.
So now, a year later, my house is infested with mice. I've called her four times and said, can you please get an exterminator? Because she said, put down some traps. So I put down the traps, not helping at all. I'm catching 10, 15 mice a day.
Cabinet here?
Yeah, right there.
These are
too.
how the
She
mice
said-
are getting in?
Yeah.
Oh, there's another dead one.
And then, yeah.
My dog is playing with them. It's just a mess. So I called her for the fourth time, and I said, can you please get an exterminator in here? Blank, blank, blank. That's how she talks to me, hangs up on me. So I called my own exterminator, and he came out and told me that there's a problem with the foundation, that mice are going to keep coming in, and those traps are not going to help. So I called her to tell her that, and she would not talk to me. She blocked her phone number so that I couldn't call her. So they came out to the house, and they saw the mouse infestation, and the guy said it's probably like 2,000 mice there. So I just wonder, do people know that I have talked to some people since I had this problem, and do you know that we have a problem with mice in the city? I'm not the only person going through this, where the mice is just taking over the property because the landlord is refusing to get an exterminator. So I just wish this could have been prevented. The whole thing could have been prevented, but she refused to get an exterminator. So, I mean, is there any mandate that you can have that can get people to exterminate their property like twice a year? Because it's a real problem here in Erie. And then my second thing is housing for senior people, disabled people. Real hard time to get in. The guy said he's going to come out and put a sticker on my house April 15th. So I have till April 15th to try to find an apartment. And I'm not having any success because all of the disabled and senior buildings you have to be on a waiting list. The lady told me it was 40 people in front of me. And I said, 40 people? That's going to be the next 2 or 3 years. I'll be dead by the time I get on the list. So it's just, we need more senior housing and more. The average rent in Erie, PA is $1,000 now. Some people don't make $1,000. You living on disability, $1,000, that's a lot of money. So, I mean, is there something we can do? Can there be like an emergency list for somebody that needs an apartment right away, like me, that's having my house? I can't even live in the house, so, could they set something aside for somebody that might need an emergency apartment and can't wait like 100 people to get on the list? It's ridiculous. A lot of the landlords are asking for 3 times the rent. So if the rent is $750 and I can afford that, why do I have to make $2,100? And with disability, you're getting maybe $1,400 a month, so you don't qualify. That's the thing. You don't qualify for anything because the rent in Erie is so high. So how is the senior people supposed to make it? I don't know what I'm going to do April 15th. I might have to just go into the homeless shelter if I can't find a place. So, I mean, is it better to stay there with the mice? I don't like mice. I'm not a fan of mice. And you just don't know what to do. Okay, I think I'm done. Thank you.
Hey everyone, if you're seeing this, we are going to be down at City Hall on April 15th, 2026 at 6 p.m. to try and talk more about the affordability crisis here. So please come down, talk about anything that's affecting you with housing, wages, groceries, healthcare, anything of that nature, anything that's affecting you, affordability. And let's get back to the clip.
All right.
All right. What do you think, Geoff?
Well, that's a really interesting clip because it gives a real world perspective. That's something somebody is actually experiencing. In my research on the issue, I spoke with a landlord who said, oh, mice, you know what that means? It means somebody's leaving food out on the dining room table, or maybe there's dishes piled up in the sink. And that might be true occasionally. It certainly means that there's some blame that's being placed by the landlords onto renters and maybe shifting the blame to justify the deferred maintenance.
That's usually what I'm seeing as well. I mean, I think it was some of the Erie, some of the Erie Housing Authority apartments, they're making it so that residents won't be able to grow food in that area, that they've been having gardens in forever because they just want to blame the gardens on what's actually happening with the mice. It's cold. There's not even a garden outside right now.
Right. Right.
The garden isn't causing the problems. It's landlords not taking care of their property.
I think part of the issue is the quality of the available housing stock. And Infinite Erie recently published statistics saying that 1/2 of Erie's housing units are rental units, and over 25% of the residents live below the poverty line in Erie, the city of Erie. Now, what that means is the people who live below the poverty line are renting what they can afford at the very edge of affordability, or they simply can't afford it. So whether the cause of mice in an apartment is food being left out or deferred maintenance, there's a wide agreement among community groups and residents and landlords that the quality of the housing stock is a major concern, and it contributes to the decline in population in Erie. That contributes to the decline in the tax base.
And honestly, the more I look at some of these plans that they have laid out for the future of Erie, I'm not really seeing how these are going to help the residents of Erie. it looks like a giant gentrification project from where I'm sitting.
Can you?
It's going to displace
Mhm.
a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
who are already living here. They have all these big projects to create professional spaces in
Mhm.
Erie.
Mm-hmm.
And they're also talking about housing, but it looks like this housing's being set up for those professionals
Right.
and being priced for those professionals and not the people who already live here.
And that would mean the downtown area where Erie Insurance and Hammett Hospital have invested in the former Avalon Hotel at 10th and State in downtown Erie, State Street being the main street in downtown Erie. And the Avalon Hotel, I think, was previously a Hilton hotel, and it's gone through different ownership over the years. And now it's going to become Airbnb type rental apartments or apartments owned by Hammett Hospital, so that their traveling nurses and their traveling doctors have a convenient and close and quality place to live. And our main message here, I think, is that all people deserve quality housing.
It should be a human right.
A human right, no doubt. And so we consider some of the other costs. Currently, in April of 2026, a gallon of gasoline at Country Fair is $3.99, almost across the board. And so we're starting to see that cost rise, and in turn triggers a crunch in affordability of food. Not just getting groceries to the supermarkets.
It also it's also going to give us a crunch on what infrastructure projects we can do, because that's what asphalt's made out of.
Right. Oil. Comes back to oil.
The good crude. And with the war overseas, I don't know what's going to happen with that. That's a whole other cluster of nonsense that we're not going to get into today.
Right.
It might be over. It might not by the next episode. Who knows?
Right. Who knows?
But
So you mentioned gentrification, and we've talked a little bit about the housing units downtown that are available publicly or commercially, we should say. And it's a well-known established fact that downtown Erie, 16501, is still considered the poorest zip code in the United States. And of course, the reason for that is there are many people who cope with disabilities and receive Social Security benefits or have an otherwise fixed income that are living in subsidized housing. And Hammett Hospital has its own zip code, although they are immediately adjacent to 16501. Erie Insurance, which is also immediately adjacent to 16501, has its own zip code. And it's got to be mentioned that those organizations do make some effort to improve the quality of life. But we also have to acknowledge gentrification, and the people who historically live in these communities, such as the Upper East Side or the Middle East Side or the Lower East Side in Erie, or on the Upper West Side of the Bayfront near the Gannon University neighborhood, where student housing is the norm. And deferred maintenance, in many cases, is also the norm. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has indicated as recently as May of 2024, so not the most recent statistics, but recent statistics that we can depend on being mathematically accurate and published in a transparent way. May of 2024, the Biden administration, the average hourly wage in the city of Erie, $25.87, meaning that in a city of 95,000 people, there are many people earning more than $25.87 an hour, and some people earning very much more than $25.87 an hour. But there's also a rather significant population earning less than $25.87 an hour. And so we factor in the costs of raising a child. And what is the hourly wage that is necessary to actually afford food or housing? And there are some recent statistics from ZipRecruiter as of March of 2026, okay, indicating an average salary in Erie of $51,953 with an average wage per hour of $24.98. So ZipRecruiter is reporting a decrease from the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
And yet we see an increase in the prices of housing continuing to go up.
Increase in the cost of housing, increase in the cost of food, increase in the cost of gas, to where a family with one adult and one child, the food cost is estimated per year to be $6,325.
A lot.
For one adult with two children, the average cost for food in a year is $9,476. For three children, that goes up to $12,612.
Well, and I'm sure this data is based on a grocery store, which the East Side doesn't really have.
That's true. The food desert in the East Side skews some of this information. So ZipRecruiter has also published, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics has published, and there's a think tank in Erie called Erie, Economic Research Institute of Erie, which is based at Penn State Behrend. And these organizations have published statistics which suggest that the required annual income after taxes in the city of Erie with one child is $69,950. With two children, that goes up to $84,394. Okay. With three children, the required salary to have a living wage, okay, $103,378. And people who are watching the Common Liberty podcast, especially people who live in Erie, will probably react with shock to some of these numbers. And to put that in perspective, the current average credit card debt per family in the United States is between $6,500 and $6,800. Nationwide, we have a total of $1.3 trillion in credit card debt, basically 20% loans. And so when we talk about gentrification, we're talking about the K-shaped economy.
Yes. And the more I look at some of the projects here, it looks like these projects were much more designed by the professionals at the top part of that K, not the people who are living day to day and pushing paycheck to paycheck on the bottom part of that K.
Mm-hmm.
And we see over and over again talk about the economy. The last election, that was the big issue. Everyone was worried about the economy. And honestly, the way the Democrats pushed it was everything's fine with the economy. The economy's fine. They started saying, oh, it's just a vibe. I promise you, if you think that what's happening in the economy is a vibe, I need you to seriously go outside and talk to your neighbors.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more important to talk to neighbors. And one consequence of this K-shaped economy is, are we going to see more bartering in the future? We talk about mutual aid programs and food pantries, mutual aid programs. And it is true that the housing units, which are being built for the professionals, those are the kinds of places people want to live. And there are remodeling programs going on, for example, at the Richford Arms at 6th and State Street, so that the subsidized housing there is modern, clean, new, in good repair. And it's the kind of place that somebody should be comfortable living in.
How are we going to make sure? I mean, are our elected leaders making sure that these places are going to maintain affordability in the future? Or are we just handing a grant over to a private developer? They're building it and they get free reign over what they do. I think I've even seen one of the big issues people are talking about is the new Scott Hotel here in Erie. I think that's been a huge issue just because everyone's looking at it going, why are we putting in more hotels? And also people going, please do something about the school. They need more money.
Right.
Seriously, guys, get on that.
Okay, so there's a good example of gentrification. The addition of even more upscale hotels along the bayfront. And it is true that one way for Erie to generate revenue is to increase its tourism business from April through October. One of the recent developments is the identification of Erie as a potential Great Lakes cruise ship destination. And this is not the type of tourism that attracts millions of people to Erie, okay? However, we do have the example of Presque Isle State Park, a real gem for the Gem City that averages 4 million in attendance each year. But when we break down that attendance, it seems like 1 million of those 25%, 1/4, those are the out-of-town folks that have discovered the Erie is a great place to visit, okay? Our sunsets are considered some of the best in the world by National Geographic photographers. Simply beautiful.
Presque Isle's just amazing.
Yeah.
Please go.
Yeah. And when we look at what the lake does to make Presque Isle so beautiful, we have to remember that erosion and sand replenishment is crucial to preserving that asset in Erie. And additionally, the other 3 million visitors to Presque Isle State Park annually are local residents, county residents, okay, regional residents, less than distant tourists who are coming to Erie for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I live in Mill Creek, and I talk to so many people who are just like, yeah, me and my wife go on a drive through the aisle every day,
Right. There's a long tradition going back to the 19th century when Joe Root was the king of Presque Isle. Joe Root is just such a colorful character and a legend in Erie of a man who lived on his own, real close to nature, out on Presque Isle, gathering his own food, hunting, and he was known to entertain families on picnics on Presque Isle. And unfortunately, as Presque Isle became developed in the early 20th century, Joe Root was moved off to the Warren State Hospital because he was considered a psychiatric risk. And so there is a type of gentrification. And there's lighthouses. We have 14,000 acres of Concord grapes and other grapes here in around Lake Erie, making it the second largest wine-producing region in the country. So those things attract tourists, genuine tourists. But when we talk about the 3 million people who visit Presque Isle on an annual basis and our local residents, there's this long tradition of visiting Presque Isle for a picnic, grilling a hot dog, going for a swim. And that's a really strong Erie tradition. Plus, we have the Perry Monument on Presque Isle to commemorate the Battle of Lake Erie, 1813.
And this summer, we're getting our beautiful USS Niagara back. They have the port for it down at the our awesome library.
Full circle there, Eric. That is a great point about the USS Brig Niagara, currently undergoing repairs, I think, in Nova Scotia, but soon...
It's in Maine.
Maine. Thank you. In Maine. Soon to return to her home port here in Erie.
Yes, for the America 250.
Exactly.
We have a
And
bunch of celebrations up here. It should be excellent.
it's going to be amazing. There'll be fireworks. There'll be great photos taken, great video. So the USS Brig Niagara normally berths at its port immediately adjacent to the Blasco Library. And this stretch of property along the bayfront in Erie was formerly industrial. And now it is transitioning to hotels, the convention center, upscale restaurants, and all of this comes with new construction for the Bayfront Highway to route traffic. And so currently we have a major disruption. People are adjusting to it. They're introducing roundabouts, and those things promise to significantly change the character of the Bayfront. And the recent controversy about the Blasco Library being invaded by Gannon University and the CLIR project was resolved in court. And court records show that the initial lease negotiated by the previous county executive was reduced from 25 years to 10 years. And attendance records must be kept. And other conditions were placed on the CLIR project at Blasco Library. But immediately next door to Blasco Library is the Hampton Inn and Suites with Oliver on the rooftop, upscale hotel, upscale restaurant. In between that hotel and the Blasco Library is currently an open lot, which is fenced off. Yes, it's owned by Scott Enterprises, which develops these projects with the Community Reinvestment Zone funding.
The CRIZ.
The CRIZ, the tax deferment. And that's a way of generating some jobs and supporting some tourism. But the latest proposal, which reflects where does the USS Brig Niagara berth and the potential for Erie to be a cruise ship destination. Okay, all of these things are connected. There's a proposal to introduce a second upscale hotel immediately to the west of Blasco Library. What else is housed at the Blasco Library? The Erie Maritime Museum. And this new hotel is designed in such a way that the signage on the side of Blasco Library would be obscured by the hotel, which says on the side of the Blasco Library, here's where the Erie Maritime Museum is. Now we know signage can always change, and that no one wants to disconnect from the important history of the USS Brig Niagara, which Commodore Oliver Hazard Perry commanded to victory over the British fleet in September of 2013. I happen to be a descendant of Commodore Perry on my mom's side of the family. My dining room table comes from the Hazard side of the family.
I know with a name like Oliver Hazard Perry, that guy must have some serious main character syndrome.
He's got the name for it.
It's a cool name. Just like that's a Navy name if I've ever heard one.
Right. So let's also remind ourselves that the name of the ship itself, the Niagara, okay, that reflects the powerful force of water in the Niagara Falls. So there's a tremendous history in this region with the lake, and its future won't just depend on tourism, but it will resoundingly depend on strong communities that feature access to food, affordable housing, affordable fuel costs. If we're going to have a commuter community and the Bayfront Highway is going to be essential, we're starting to touch on the reality of gas prices right now.
Yeah. And, you know, my big worry is there's always this, let's put money into this private investment, and then it feels like they just think everything's going to come along later. And that's not what I usually see.
What do you see?
I usually see a lot of programs failing and then kind of just falling apart because they weren't able to secure the investments. They're vision was too broad and too big, trying to bring in a lot of hope. You know, my big things about affordability, you know, times are tough right now. Everyone who's on that bottom part of that K is just really struggling. And we need to be investing in our community. Number one with schools, public transit, making sure our streets are fixed up, making sure that the housing that is in disrepair is being you know, we're building new housing or repairing housing in disrepair and selling it to community members, not, you know, outside people, and selling it at a good cost, maybe a land bank idea, where we can keep the prices of housing a little bit lower.
Sure.
So we can fight these big forces of private equity and the real estate agencies and all that kinds of stuff.
Out of town ownership of rental
Out-of-town
properties.
ownership, you know, I mean, that was one of the big issues with Miss Charnel, you know.
Right?
You know, I do believe her property ended up getting condemned because they couldn't even get a hold of the landlord to do anything. And luckily she found somewhere. But that's not the same experience that everyone's having. A lot of people don't find somewhere, you know, and
one of the risks of the deferred maintenance and older wiring, of course, is the threat of house fires. And within the last week, Erie has witnessed a tragic house fire on the east side of Erie. And not all the facts are known. The fire department's investigation, possibly the police department's investigation, is not complete. But there were 2 infant children who passed away as a result of the house fire. And there are probably some extenuating circumstances. What was the level of supervision in the house? What were the children doing? We just don't know. But it's the kind of dramatic and tragic circumstance that draws into very sharp contrast. What about recent house fires in more affluent neighborhoods where the deferred maintenance is not an issue, where the response times of fire departments are not an issue? And we know that the West Side Fire Department has an excellent response time. There are many substations, even some on the east side of Erie, that make it possible to save lives and to make a difference in these tragic circumstances. But even a year ago on East 10th Street and Parade, there was another house fire, a very major house fire next to a very thriving business, Denny's Car Wash and Denny's Laundromat and Denny's Ice Cream.
I have a story. I just had my neighbor come up to me asking me about what fuse panel I have in my apartment because it was recalled in the 70s.
You mean the 1970s?
Yes. The 70s that were 20 years before I was born.
The late 20th century.
Yes.
The decade in which I was born.
Yeah, and you know, I guess my neighbor had said, "Hey, can you fix this?" And they're just like, "No." Just no.
Right.
Like,
so that's another interesting point. How much maintenance are residents doing in their apartments to reduce the cost of rent? Bartering their labor for reduced rent. And some of the tasks required, like maintaining an electrical panel or changing a toilet, you know, removing out the old toilet, replacing the wax ring, resetting the toilet, etc. All of that takes a strong back and a little bit of knowledge. And sure, there's YouTube videos. We can all learn how to replace the drum and pistons in a clothes washer. Save yourselves $500. Order the parts from Yapel Appliances. So we're starting to find the good weather. We're coming out of a brutal winter, and in April of 2026, we've got a lot of rain.
It's another issue in
Mhm.
Erie. I mean, I was on, when was it? On Tuesday. I was driving down the street. We had this crazy like wind. It was like 75-mile-an-hour wind.
Mhm.
I was in my car and I could not see anything. And but right after it, I was driving down 12th Street right before I hit Erie and Mill Creek, and of course it's just
No
water halfway
Nazi
up.
anything.
Water up to my halfway up my tire, and I'm just like, God, we need more stormwater maintenance.
Halfway up your tire.
Halfway up my tire,
And you're probably rolling with 17s.
I got 15.
You got 15s. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was just like it was deep.
Yeah.
You know, I mean nothing.
You're talking about 7 inches of standing water, probably.
It was probably about 6 or 7 inches. Yeah.
Right on.
It was enough to where you could like feel it driving, like,
And that's stormwater that's backed up from the sewage system and drainage systems. And of course, one of the other major concerns about all this development, the construction of the Bayfront Highway, the parking lots associated with hotels, all of those hard surfaces must be able to drain effectively. Mother Nature knows how to absorb the water in open fields, but that's also influenced by the urbanization and construction and the drainage that people plan.
I've recently learned one of the big issues here in Erie is our train track that goes right through the city, because it's a little bit raised.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a little bit of a berm, and then it's on there, and it stops the flow coming down into Lake Erie.
Mm-hmm.
Because Erie is just like this little shallow slope that goes into the lake.
The escarpment
from
down
where
to the bayfront.
Glacier just like really ripped up Lake Erie.
It's interesting to look at a map of North America and see the southeast to northwest axis of the Great Lakes, starting with Lake Erie, going northwest up towards Alaska. And you can see the effects of the ancient glacial sheet that covered North America. And when we look at that, there's a powerful reminder of climate change and what we're experiencing right now with fossil fuels changing the climate. One of the other controversial elements of climate change is the introduction of AI data centers. And especially in Pennsylvania, we're concerned about AI data centers being located in communities with less resources to advocate for the environment, where you have multi-billion-dollar corporations imposing their will in such a way that, yes, the AI data centers may provide a benefit, but there's also a significant environmental cost.
And also they start putting a heavier load on the electric production that the area is using, so prices for that go up.
Part of the affordability crisis, utility prices. And that also means that the price of a mobile phone or internet will go up, even though the quality of service might not.
And, you know, it takes a lot of oil to get one of these things across the ocean.
It does take a lot of oil to get a phone across the ocean, whether it's being shipped by plane or by boat. We're seeing this affordability crisis in so many ways. Over the last 5 years, which is a good chunk of time to review what's going on in Erie, since the pandemic. Post-pandemic, the United States had the strongest economy in the world. And the Biden administration enacted the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, which is what's paying for the new highway and construction and roundabouts on the Bayfront. And that modernization, the new asphalt, the new pavement, yes, that has to be renewed every so often. The landscape changes, population changes, and we have to plan for the future, an effective future for all people, especially those who have the least access to services and goods in the economy, which relies on 65 to 75% of consumer spending.
Yeah. And I really hope that there's also, I just want to talk more about the Bayfront.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of, amenities going in down there. Are these amenities going to be affordable for the people living right behind the Bayfront in
Mm-hmm.
some of the poorest zip codes in the country?
Right.
And I mean, we have all this beautiful construction happening right on the Bayfront, right along Erie. You walk up the street a block
Sure.
from this, it's a poor neighborhood, some poorer than others, but are the people living there going to be able to take advantage of all the amenities at these places? Enjoy are there discounts for residents at Oliver's rooftop?
Interesting question.
And
The people who live in these neighborhoods call it home. These are homes. And these are places where people raise their families. These are places where generations of families have lived and contributed to Erie. Erie peaked, in one sense, in about 1965, specifically with its population at 130,000 and production of all kinds of industrial goods. And now we're looking at how does Erie transform itself as the key to survival. Knowledge is power, power is control, and transformation is the key to survival. There are cities like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Hamilton, Ontario, also part of the so-called Rust Belt, which is trying to reinvent itself. Maybe we should call it the stainless steel belt or the stainless steel chain. Around the Great Lakes, from Detroit to Toronto to Buffalo to Erie to Cleveland to Toledo to Detroit. That circuit around Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, Lake Michigan. And what's Erie's role in that? Because at one time, Erie was the world's largest producer of locomotives. They were shipped out of Erie using the St. Lawrence Seaway Passage into the Atlantic to Europe to rebuild Europe after World War I and World War II. And that meant excellent wages for welders, for electricians, linemen, and all the associated production positions. So those families had to buy groceries, had to buy clothes, bought fuel, paid for all the daily living expenses. Now those well-paying jobs are becoming scarce. And as we look at what has changed in the United States since the pandemic, the last 5 years, and we look more specifically at Erie itself, we're coming to the issue of advocacy. Advocacy is the overt or subtle act of bringing attention to a critical need for people, whether it's civil rights, whether it's housing, accessibility to food, affordability of schools, quality of schools, teacher salaries. Teachers shouldn't have to provide supplies for their own classroom.
Teachers, I think personally, a lot of this needs to start with teachers. Teachers and our students, there's a direct correlation between crime rates and education.
Mm-hmm.
When we give kids a good education, they have more opportunities. And we need to make sure our learning support kids have a good education, because there's so many times where these poor schools cannot handle or have the capability to deal with
Mm-hmm.
children with learning supports.
The hardworking parents who maybe hold down 2 jobs so that they can afford to raise their kids. Do they have the time? Do they have the energy to help kids with homework?
Exactly. And, you know, it needs to start with teachers. We need more teachers, and we need smaller class sizes. And then it might take a little bit, but guess what? Those teachers are going to be buying houses. When they have a good job, they're going to be fixing up those houses.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to get a little bit more money for the school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because property taxes will go up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe those teachers will decide to open a new business with the wages that they earn to do something else. You know, so much of this could come from education. And then once we start getting kids graduating, then it's all over. We're doing good stuff then, you know.
It's interesting to note that Hammett Hospital has a program called Pathways to Partnership, and it's similar to the UPMC Jameson School of Nursing here in Erie. One thing that the pandemic brought to everyone's attention was the critical importance of nurses, the hardworking nurses with an excellent work ethic and true compassion for people who are suffering. We have a shortage of healthcare workers in this country. We do not have adequate production of antibiotics in this country. It's a critical security need. Why are we bombing Iran? Why are we going along blindly with anything that Israel says when we have so many needs here at home? Women in Israel have the choice and the nationalized health care to seek an abortion if they choose. American women in the United States do not. We do not have nationalized health care. There are agencies here in Erie like Adagio that provide excellent care for women in need. And UPMC Jameson School of Nursing is attempting to generate more people for the long term in healthcare positions. There are positions of maintenance and service technicians that have to work on the boiler rooms and the generators and the backup power systems of hospitals, which can be critical with the type of brutal winter we get. So when we look at the last 5 years and what the Biden administration did with the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, that's really the kind of pro-union, living wage infrastructure investment that Erie needs on a regular basis, on a daily basis. And these hardworking, very proud, very resilient people like Charnel are able to identify very quickly what their community needs are.
And a lot of these plans for $800, what was it, $800 studios is what that's not affordable.
What's the quality of living? And Erie's industrial history does include toxic waste sites. The Erie Coke plant being maybe the most important example among several valid examples. But it's well known that when the EPA came to investigate or do its annual survey of emissions from the Erie Coke plant, they would notify the managers ahead of time, and the measurements of air quality were taken at ground level. And there was a middle school, Wayne Middle School, at East 6th and East Avenue, where there were numerous school teachers coming down with breast cancer. And when the air samples were taken from the roof of the former Wayne Middle School, not the ground level, but the roof, those air quality samples were found to be in increased violation of the EPA guidelines. And so we talk about the health of the teachers who are older adults, but what about the kids who are affected by that from a very young age. And we know that fluoride, the right kind of fluoride, is a very necessary ingredient in promoting good health. Japan actually has an interesting alternative with chemicals in toothpaste. But we do know that the Erie Water Works is well within the guidelines for providing fluoridated water.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, fluoridated water, has been a pretty feisty topic ever since it was first announced. But I mean, even just looking at Calgary at this point, it's pretty easy to see that, we don't have and granted, I have to say, at the end of the day, I would prefer us not put fluoride in water. I would rather us have universal health care where we have access to dentistry,
Right.
and can deal with this properly, because there is a lot of mixed data. Like drinking water is not going to make your kid super slow. A lot of these, there's some recent studies that fluoride levels over 1.5 milliliters per liter can cause some brain damage, but so can drinking too much sugar and stuff, caffeine and
Right. Caffeinated energy drinks.
Yep, those what was it? The Panera lemonade was killing people a few years ago.
Heavy metal breakdown.
But I mean, the outcome is if we don't put fluoride in water, kids don't have access to proper dental care, end up getting infections, and it puts an increased cost on people living.
And that is an excellent summary of the affordability crisis, Eric. And we've touched on a couple parts of the affordability crisis in Erie today. And we want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Common Liberty podcast. Load the clip,